Halo Infinite cut content. These videos get harder and harder the longer that we go without any content in Halo Infinite, and yeah, it's sad to see what could have been in Infinite. But hey guys, and welcome. Today we're reviewing more Halo Infinite's cut content and concept arts that were planned to be in the final build of the game, but were cut due to the lack of development time, or just due to the fact that the ambition of 343 to make the best game possible was just through the roof, and they just didn't have the facilities, the time to be able to pull it off. As always, I do love to hear your thoughts on the matter and what you think of Halo Infinite right now, and what you want to be added to Halo Infinite's campaign moving forward in future DLC. Don't forget to drop a like on today's video, guys, if you did go ahead and enjoy, and subscribe for more campaign cut content videos and just general Halo content on the channel. But let's go straight into it. So we've done multiple videos on Halo Infinite's campaign cut content and concept art. While yes, a lot of the art we'll be discussing in this video may not have ever made it into the game, some of it actually did. Some of it was also concept on the different looks of characters that we see in game today, which are very, very interesting to say the least. Some of it also content that was initially meant to be there but was cut due to lack of development time or just general development issues throughout the development cycle of Halo Infinite, and as we know, it was a really rough time for the developers. Before we get into the content though, I came across a comment on Halo Waypoint which reflects exactly how the community is feeling about Halo Infinite's campaign right now, and I want to read it out to you guys before we get into this, because for me, I came across this and yeah, it just adds to the sadness of this video, so I'm sorry. Whenever I think about it, I get all sad inside. There could have been so much more to the campaign, but it was mostly cut, and there's evidence of this all over Zeta Halo. Crashed blister backs, legs of scarabs, pieces of mantis, the ability to easily hijack pelicans with pre-made mechanics. I'm just getting depressed thinking about it. I really want the content. Looking at it, I don't blame 343 for cutting it all. It was very, very ambitious, but now that tensions are a bit less loose, I'd really like a roadmap for the future content of Halo Infinite's campaign DLC. A clear and concise roadmap just for the campaign. All of the plot holes in the story were no doubt a result of the bad patching job, story-wise, and a lack of the rest of the story. If 343 made the rest of the content available and just updated the campaign, that would be amazing. Just amazing. A rendition of the campaign. I really, really feel sad about the lack of content. If 343 ever look at this post, just know I'm not the only one that wants this back. My friend, us in the community are all standing by you with this, but it's so apparent. When we walk around Zeta Halo, we can see the ruins and wreckage of many different things across the map, which, as mentioned here, was probably as a result of cut content and at some point was meant to be within the story. Many monuments and different structures that have been laid dormant during the story with little to nothing to do with it at all, and they don't do anything in game, but a lot of them have the terminals that the weapon would typically go into, and there are loads of these around the map. Maybe in DLC we'll have a use for these and maybe they'll actually mean something in the story, but these ruins and structures, I've always thought to myself, what were they for? Thinking about it in a broader scale, it's most likely as a result of the cut content and development issues that the developers went through. But yeah, hopefully in DLC we get a lot of the new content, a lot of existing content from that was cut, and just generally a lot of the plot holes that are filled in, and as much information given to us as possible. But anyway, let's get straight into some of the cut content. Okay, so first of all, you're going to see a series of different images, ones that we know as skimmers from the Halo Infinite in terms of the mobs, but what are the rest of these mobs? What are they? Where did they come from? We haven't seen these in Halo Infinite so far, and as I'm aware, just in Halo in general, they look very, very similar to the Harbinger, some of these additional concepts, and I'll zoom into some of them now so you understand what I mean, but it makes me think, are these maybe versions of the Endless? Are they the designs of the Endless, the early concepts of the Endless? Is this what they're going to look like? Is the Harbinger essentially what the Endless will look like? You have the more slender versions like the Harbinger, which might be able to teleport when fighting, similar to the Prometheans in Halo 4 and 5. You also have the thicker boys like the Brutes or the Chiefs equivalents, like I say we have the Elites as well. The Skimmers being like the Buggers or the really irritating flying mobs. The smaller versions like the Grunts, and even bigger boys like the Hunters, which are on all four legs and they do start to charge at you without any weapons or anything like that. No thanks, but it looks pretty good. These could be what the Endless look like and what we might expect to see later on in DLC 1 when we do finally see what the Endless look like. From what we know so far, the Harbinger seems to be a part of the Endless in some way or another, whether that she is what the Endless will look like or whether she is some form of like a prophet in an overall Endless faction, which may be a different species but is still a part of the Endless. We don't really know so far, but yeah, very interesting to theorize and to think about. about. You should take into account that initially the Endless could have been a part of the campaign in general without the need of them coming up in DLC. They could have been a main faction in Halo Infinite before they were cut from the game, but due to time and maybe things like the overall models not being finished, or just generally them not fitting into the lore and the story after Halo 5, they could have been pushed back and released within DLC 1, which is of course what's happened right now. Maybe it was initially thought that the Endless should be in Halo Infinite, however, because of the cliffhangers of Halo 5 and the bad reception of not playing as the Chief throughout the campaign, they wanted to just focus on the Chief, his story, the UNSC, and have the UNSC on the back foot, so maybe that's why they've pushed it back. And very interesting to say the least that these do look very similar, and this could be what the Endless look like, so let me know what your thoughts and opinions are on this down below. However, it's also important to take into account that this could be the Harbinger's early concept as well. The other ones, I don't know what these are, whether they are part of the Banished or not. These could be the Endless, but specifically the one with a more slender look could be concepts of the Harbinger, so just take that into account as well. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. The next one I wanted to cover is something that looks very, very early in concept, and this one does look like a concept, but nevertheless it was a thought that went through the process of the developers' heads of what the ring or the story could look like, so I wanted to bring it up and share it with you guys. We do know that from previous lore, humans were actually once situated on Zeta Halo, and maybe 343 wanted to continue that in some way. Now, yes, I'm not saying that they're the same humans that were on the ring previously that were right now, or the remnants of them, but there could be, for example, Marines that were stranded that have set up or built strongholds on the ring, because at some points in the lore throughout Halo, there were actually people sent to Zeta Halo to study it. So maybe there are remnants of those. I don't really know. This is just, again, speculation, trying to figure out what this could be. But also, look at the person and the weapon that they're using. It doesn't look very sophisticated or Halo-like. So there could be things like farmers or general civilians living on the ring at the time as well. There could be small cities or different bases or strongholds which contain humans that are living there. Again, we don't know, but the story could have took a very interesting turn, to say the least. Okay, so the next ones are some really interesting concepts around the weapon and how she was initially going to look.
What the hell is even that?
No, not this one. Shit, wrong picture. Here we go. Some of the designs, pretty questionable, I won't lie, but a bougie looking Cortana wearing something like a boiler suit, a skirt, actual armor pieces, or a coat over a shoulder. Some even with shorter hair, a t-shirt, a UNSC crew uniform. I'm glad they settled for the design that they went with, because I can't say I'm a huge fan of some of these other designs, but let me know which one you would prefer or you like down below. Would you have preferred one of these designs in the final build of Halo Infinite, or the design that they've actually settled with right now? I like the one that the weapon currently holds. The next few concepts are actually story related, and these could have actually been parts of the story initially or parts that were cut from the game pretty early on. The first one shows what looks like the Zeta Halo ring actually firing, impacting the gas planet next to it, with a mysterious planet in the background, which I don't really know what it is, but looks pretty interesting. But the question is though, what could have made the ring go through the firing sequence? Could it have potentially been the Endless setting off when they were freed, or trying to set it off? The Banished? Cortana even? I would love to hear from some of the developers on some of the early plans for Halo Infinite and what the campaign would have looked like, because a lot of these concepts are super interesting. Like, there's going to be so much mystery behind these concepts going throughout Halo Infinite, and I would love to maybe have a developer on the channel one day talking through it, or having just generally a developer talk about it and be open about what was going to happen in Halo Infinite from early on, and things that were cut from the game that potentially we may see in the future, or things that were a bit out there that the developers wanted to add in there or thought it would be a good idea but just never made the cut. So yeah, maybe one day, so maybe sure subscribe to stick around for that potentially coming one day. The next image shows the weapon, Cortana, and also the Chief, with the first showing the Chief setting the weapon free, and she's moving towards a fully fledged Cortana. I can imagine that in earlier builds of the game that all three of these would have met at some point in the story, and it would have played out much different. The fact that Cortana in Infinite was effectively an off-screen character, and that we never actually met her in person throughout the game. And you do need to remember that towards the end of the campaign, we didn't actually meet Cortana in person. It was a message that she expected the Chief to find when he entered the Silent Auditorium. So yeah, we never actually met Cortana in person. Maybe in this scene we could have had a fight scene between the weapon and Cortana. The weapon trying to lock Cortana down, and her Cortana just not having any of it. Could you imagine if that actually happened? And then the next one is also what looks like an early concept of the Chief and Cortana cutscene towards the end of the campaign. An interesting point here is that Cortana looks almost human in this image, with the Chief wielding a pistol in his left hand as well. Were 343 going to do a madness here and make the Chief kill Cortana at one point? or try and fight her. Imagine the ending of Halo Infinite with a Cortana boss fight. I would have saved and quit there and then. I would not have gone through with that. But you know, this gives me mad Halo 4 ending vibes, with Cortana and the Chief, Cortana being a human-sized figure, being able to touch Chief for the first time, etc. This gives me massive vibes of that. So maybe they were going to reenact the ending of Halo 4 again and actually say goodbye to Cortana this time. Or maybe again we were meant to actually fight Cortana. Imagine a boss fight against Cortana. That would be next level, just what is happening. But yeah, I'm really glad they didn't go that way. Okay, so moving on to the next couple of images, we're actually more based on some early concepts of what the Zeta Halo ring was meant to look like, and we know that these were actually true things that were meant to be in the game, because we were told that a lot of it was cut, and there were things like biomes and different weather effects and different things like this, fog, whatnot, that actually should have been in this game but was cut due to development issues, less time to perfect any bugs or issues and polish the game overall, because if the map's bigger, it means you've got more polishing to do. If there are more elements and things like that in the game, like weather effects, fog, all of this sort of stuff, then there's more to polish. So a lot of it was scrapped, removed, and then the ring was very condensed and it was very basic with the biomes and things that are on there. So unfortunately, a lot of the stuff didn't make it, but this is what we have so far, and this is the sort of stuff that we should have expected if they had more time. As you can see, we have a massive forerunner structure with a bridge going over a huge lake, which is a smaller waterfall, potentially going into a big waterfall. Again, the vast landscapes in the background with the huge mountain ranges, along with loads of foliage and trees covering the entire landscape, and it looks like this goes on for absolute miles. Again, one of the things I think that Zeta Halo and Halo Infinite in general does lack when exploring the campaign is those abandoned buildings or structures that we can go in and explore. We do have a couple of these Forerunner looking like structures that we can go in through the campaign, but there's only really one purpose, and that's throughout one mission. There's no downstairs going underneath the ring. It's literally one story. Go to a terminal, put the weapon on it, come back up, and that's it, really. There's nothing that we can go in and fully explore, go deep within the building or within the structure and understand more around the history of it, what happened there, and find out these secrets. Stuff like this would be amazing to do because it'd give you a reason to go back and to want to explore it. And especially if the atmosphere was very dark, eerie, you can hear sound effects, you can have an element of stealth. Stuff like this would make the game much, much better. And even if there was things like blood on the wall or stuff like this to show that there was something that went down here that we don't know and it's a mystery, we've got to try and uncover it. There's a lack of things like this around Zeta Halo, and I do hope that a lot of this is implemented again in DLC. And again, the next point even proves my point further. A huge Forerunner structure to the left-hand side of this image with a vast landscape molded around it. The sun setting on the icy biome in the background and grassy lands spanning over miles and miles. It's actually sad to think of how mad this game could have been and how mad it could have looked. Like, could you imagine just grappling up this massive Forerunner structure to the left of this picture? Like, it would be really cool. But yeah, it shows what this game was meant to be like early on, and it's sad to see that what it did turn out like compared to what it could have been like. But not to say it's a bad game right now, but yeah, what it could have been is pretty sad. And then the next one is another huge one that I wanted to go into and share, and this one actually covers caves and chasms. Now, we know that in the story that we know that in Zeta Halo and Halo Infinite in general, that puzzles aren't necessarily the game's strong point, with the most complex puzzle being find a power seed and place it into a terminal of some sort to open a door. Have you ever come across a cave in Zeta Halo and thought, why was so much detail put into a cave when there's nothing really in there? Well, things like puzzles, side quests, and secret areas within these caves were actually initially planned to give you that extra element of exploration throughout the ring and hidden away in these secret caves around the map, allowing you to spend time to find them, and it rewards you well if you do, giving you a reason to explore and go inside these caves. Unfortunately, it's another feature that suffered Halo Infinite's awful development, but man, I would have loved to have seen this actually happen. Really sad times. For me, one of the biggest criticism with Halo Infinite, I know a lot of people also feel the same way, is that yes, there's a lot to do in terms of open world and exploration, but what happens when you've done all of that? And again, I've mentioned this before, you can say that with any game and any game in general, but for a game like Halo, you want to be able to go back and find new things every single time, and unfortunately, there's so much potential within this open world game that just isn't really there at the moment. So I'm hoping that DLC can bring that as well. With it being a 10-year game as well, every year I can imagine we'll get new content coming to the campaign to expand upon it and make it something that we can go back to and enjoy for another 10 years after that. But Again, we'll have to wait and see what they come up with, but I do hope that they do it right. The final one around Zeta Halo, and one that's potentially story related, is one that I want you guys to look at very, very strictly here. Can you tell me one thing that you can see in this image? Fog and wind will be available to use in Forge worlds when Forge is implemented to the game in Season 3, with it showing here as well as different weather effects. They were of course cut from the game, as I mentioned earlier, and as we can see here, fog is covering the landscape of Zeta Halo, and with the different effects, the eerie effects of Zeta Halo, with it being very dusky, very dull in the sky as well. Walking around a foggy Zeta Halo with a lot of atmosphere, making it feel a bit eerie. That's what we're missing out on here. Yes, we can go to the top of a canyon and some music will play and we'll be like, wow, this looks great. But there's no like, oh my god, this is like mad. I'm like, the music's building up, the fog's coming in. It's getting a bit scary now. It's night time, we're going into a cave. We don't get this element of horror or fear when going through Zeta Halo, and that's one of the things I think this game would benefit from massively. And if in any way at all the developers can work on doing that within DLC, on maybe a new part of the ring where you go there and it strips you of all of your armor upgrades, all of your weapons, and you only have a pistol, a torch, and you have to traverse around this one part of the map with just nothing, leaving you only a pistol, complete darkness, fog all around, and just sound and your torch to show you where you're going. That stuff like this would make it really cool, and I would love different effects like this as well, and it's easily expanded upon, and the lore of the game allows you to do that with the different parts of Zeta Halo which are being rebuilt over and over again. But some of the things I would love to see in the future is things like rain, fog, snow just randomly coming down and falling on the ring as well, lightning, thunder, stuff that we don't really have at the moment that would set the tone really, really well. But it's a shame it didn't all make the final cut, because this stuff was meant to be in the game. Rain was meant to come down randomly, snow was meant to come down randomly, it was meant to have random fog events. There's supposed to be wind in the game, which by the way is in Forge as well, so wind will be a big thing which will give turbulence for vehicles and different things like this. A lot of the aspects have been cut, but they will eventually hopefully return, and with the likes of Forge coming and implementing some of these cut features, I'm hoping the campaign will take some of these on as well. Now, the final two images I wanted to go over today are really, really banished, and they're actually banished vehicles in an early concept, and even one as a banished Phantom, which is very, very interesting. I think the Phantoms in Halo Infinite could look a lot more banished than what they already do. The overall banished aesthetic is taking ready-made vehicles or weapons, stealing them and reverse engineering them, and or even just making them look like their own. I don't think the banished Phantoms really do that for me. But these concepts, rust covering the vehicles, panels essentially being bolted or welded on, very rustic looking concepts. Things like this, like the Spectre, one of these do look like the Spectre from Halo 2, which I do miss. And hopefully they will be returning to Halo Infinite at one point as well, and there have been a lot of different concepts in the game files of these vehicles in there, so I do hope that at some stage they will return, and Season 2 is looking like that likely season for that return. But I love the design of these vehicles, and I really hope they get added into future expansions. Guys, that's going to be all for today, and another insight to Halo Infinite's campaign cut content and concepts. It's sad to see how much more this game should have been, but I suppose that we can say the same for games such as Halo 2. An awful development, but it gave us one of the most memorable and well-told stories in the Halo universe. Halo's story was good, but Halo Infinite's story was good, but the overall issues in development hindered the telling of that story, leaving a lot of the plot points to be told in future DLC and leaving a lot of cliffhangers. I'm hoping and I'm pretty confident that the rest of this story DLC and 343's vision will be told and exposed in future DLC, and my fingers are crossed for that, with the game in 3-4 years time being exactly what 343 envisioned. And I can't wait to see that when it does happen. But guys, I hope you have enjoyed today's video. Drop a like if you have, subscribe if you're brand new to the channel, and let me know your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. Guys, have a great rest of your day, speak soon, and take care.